Hello, everybody. Today we are going to discuss international management. So, chapter 6 for you all. Um, like I've said before, I love this chapter. It's super interesting to me. My undergrad is in international business, so I just find it interesting, and the way the world is going as far as business wise. We do so much globally now thanks to the internet that it's super important to know as much information as possible. All right, so I'm going to kind of go through some things with you in your text. And so I have it pulled up here. And so I'll kind of go through some things. I'm going to try to highlight a few things that'll be on your quiz without making it too lengthy, so y'all will hopefully watch it. So the very beginning of this chapter talks about the importance of international business, and it talks about globalization, and you will need to be aware of this for your quiz. So just the worldwide phenomenon whereby countries of the world are really becoming more interconnected, and trade barriers among nations are really disappearing, and a lot and so we see that, we can have meetings across the world with somebody. We're here in Little Rock, and we could have meetings with somebody in China, thanks to the internet. So the barriers are really starting to come down. So it's super important for managers to understand the cultural aspects of societies in general in which they may find themselves, and really need to learn how to adapt to different cultural conditions. So that's kind of what this whole chapter is about. So I'm going to kind of walk through some of the learning outcomes with you and hit some highlights for this chapter. So in the first section here, it talks about the importance of international management, and it gives you some different factors contributing to making globalization a reality for us all, okay? And one of the first things it talks about is lowering the trade barriers. So some things off the top of my head: the trade between the different countries, of course, and the growing importance for foreign direct investment, which we'll talk about in a minute, and the growing competition from our emerging market multinationals, and then and just the internet, right? So the globalization fueling the pervasiveness of our World Wide Web that we are all very familiar with, all right? So the first one they talk about is lowering trade barriers. There's a lot of trade agreements that we don't dive into this particular chapter very much, but if you have taken like Intro to Business, there's a whole chapter on it. It talks a little bit more about different trade agreements, but it also mentions the WTO, which is the World Trade Organization, and it really is the only truly global organization that deals with the rules of the trade around the world. So when you see WTO, World Trade Organization, you'll hear that a lot when it comes to foreign trade and just doing business abroad in general. The next factor it mentions is the foreign direct investment, or the FDI, sorry, as you will see it abbreviated quite a bit. And it's important to know that the United States has one of the highest FDIs, if you will. And I believe if you look, here it is, a little chart here in your book, and it kind of shows you here we are versus the rest of different other countries, if you will. But FDI, so foreign direct investment, just when one country invests in another country, as far as different markets. It could be that there's certain companies they're investing in. There's different things that kind of go into FDI, but it's when one country invests in another. The next one they talk about is the internet, and we are all familiar with the internet. And so it just kind of gives you a little chart here talking about the different internet data used. It gives you some more insights on growth, okay? And you see that Africa has the most growth there, and it's because, they have not always had easy access to the internet as we have here in the United States. So it's not it's not the same all over the world, and so so that's why you'll see that with greater potential there in those different countries. All right, so it talks about Hofstede's cultural framework. All right, so really understanding culture is really critical to society, and in this chapter, or in this section of the chapter, it talks about the most popular cultural framework, which is the Hofstede scheme. And it was from a Dutch social scientist, and he surveyed over 88,000 employees in 72 countries in which IBM had subsidiaries. And he really developed, or helped develop, this cultural model primarily on the basis of differences in values and beliefs regarding work goals. All right. And so he had this resulted in, if you will, 4 main dimensions. And so, and those being power distance. And it shows you here, if you look at this, if you're looking at the same chart that I'm looking at, it shows you the different countries with the different dimensions: the power distance, individualism, uncertainty avoidance, and masculinity. Power distance being just the degree to which societies accept power differences and authority in society. Individualism is more the degree to which a society focuses on the relationship of the individual to the group. The uncertainty avoidance here is just the degree to which people in a society are more comfortable with uncertainty and unpredictable situations. And then masculinity is more just the degree to which a society emphasizes traditional masculine qualities such as advancement, earnings. And so just make sure that you're familiar with these 4 dimensions. You will see 1 or 2 of them on your quiz. So just a little FYI there. But just highly recommend you kind of look over that. There's a lot of information in this particular section that goes into more depth of the different 4 dimensions here. And I won't read every single thing to you, but some great information there to make sure that you check out. Then it talks about the globe framework, right? So this is really how regions of the world are categorized, if you will, using this globe framework. And, in this section kind of talks about how this categorization really helps enhance the understanding of cross-cultural leadership, okay? And so a couple of things here. One word, and some of you may have heard it, some of you may have not, but one word that you will need to be familiar with on your quiz that they talk about is an expatriate. And so this is just a foreign employee who moves and works in another country for an extended period of time. So kind of know that going into it. But there are 2 cultural dimensions that, they talk about being unique to the Globe project here, and that's the performance orientation, which, emphasizes performance and achievement, and the humane orientation, which places more importance on fairness and altruism and caring and such like that. So focus more on the human versus just the work itself. Okay. And so the importance of this is really, once again, just to kind of know how national cultures have really preferences when it comes to different leadership styles. All right. So there's different clusters here, and they break it down into 7 important clusters of this Globe project. All right. And here they are, and they're right here that across. I don't have to read each one to you, but they really, each cluster really rates differently the styles of leadership that Globe researchers have considered. Okay, so that's the kind of the idea behind it. It gives 6 different leadership profiles. All right, so there's the charismatic types. All right, so just this is the degree to which the leader can really inspire and motivate others. And here we are with the chart of the different leadership types, if you will. The participative type, so which leaders really involve others in the decision making. And then the team-oriented, which is The degree to which a leader can really foster a high-function team, the participative, which I just said, the humane oriented type, which really shows compassion, generosity, the autonomous, the individualistic leadership, and then the self-protective, which the leader is more self-centered and uses face-saving approach, which a lot of us do not want to encounter. All right. And so just be aware, there's going to be some of that sprinkled on your quiz, especially when it comes to the 2 cultural dimensions, like such as the performance orientation, humane orientation, stuff like that. So make sure but that's kind of the gist of the globe framework in a nutshell. Once again, giving you a quick synopsis of it. So I'm not reading every single thing to you, but cultural stereotyping and social institutions, all right? So an understanding of cultural stereotyping is super important, and how we can prepare for cultural stereotyping by looking at different social institutions. So that's kind of where this focus is, if you will. And it talks about the different roles of social institutions in international management. And there's a large number of social institutions that can really impact international business. And so it kind of talks about 3 main types here. It mentions social stratification. So this is where the degree to which social benefits are unequally distributed, if you will, and those patterns are really perpetuated for life. And then we've got education, and this is more of just the socializing experiences which really prepare individuals to act in society. And then the religion. So this is our shared set of beliefs, our activities, institutions based on faith in different supernatural forces, if you will. And if you scroll with me, I'm going to show you, there's a couple of charts that I think kind of stands out here. This is a chart showing you the different religions. You'll see that, and you'll need to be aware of these for your quiz. And so just be aware. But the different religions, you'll see that Christianity still holds in there about 31%. It's the most popular religion around the world, if you will. And so I just thought this was a good, with Islam coming in second, so I thought this was a good chart for you to kind of get a visual when it comes to religion, which plays a big part in a lot of people's cultural society, if you will. Next, we're going to dig into the cross-cultural assignments. And one main thing they talk about in this section is really cultural intelligence, how it's super important. That is really just the ability to function and manage effectively in cultural diverse settings. And so that's kind of at the very beginning of this. I told you it's super important to be able to do that, because that is where our world is going to. Our country is going to, our world is going to, we are becoming more global. But there are 4 dimensions here as well. And if you, I'm going to scroll down a little bit here, that make up cultural intelligence. So we've got the cognitive dimension, so individuals' knowledge of values and practices. We have the metacognitive dimension, which kind of reflects the ability to use your cross-cultural knowledge to understand and adapt to the cultural environment. Then you got your motivational dimension, which really reflects the ability to and desire to continuously learn the aspects of new cultures, and your behavioral dimension, which is really based on the ability of the individual to really exhibit appropriate forms of verbal and nonverbal behaviors when interacting with people from other cultures. And so here are some different, I thought this is interesting. I thought y'all might like it. In your book, there's this chart, and it gives you the different dimensions, and it gives you some cultural intelligence statements. And I won't read them to you, but I thought it kind of gives you examples, so it'll help you just soak in the information and be able to relate it as well. And then The last thing I wanted to talk about, well, not necessarily the last thing. Next to last thing was the different global strategies. There are the main strategies, if you will, that this section talks about that they're going for. There's three of them. There's the global strategy, the regional strategy, and the local strategy. All right. Global, all operation activities are managed fairly similarly worldwide. Regional is when they adapt more to like regional requirements, and then local strategy, of course, where they're adapted to fit specific countries. And they give you some great examples in here. So if you're standardizing worldwide, like global, if you will, they give you an example of Ford Motor Company and how they wanted to really run with the electric cars. And so they wanted to pursue a global electrification strategy using a global platform across many different modes and styles. And so it gives you the example of the C platform to make a variety of vehicles ranging from compact cars to larger 5-passenger cars, and how it will be used to build hybrid electric and battery cars. So they're doing that more on a global scale. And then they give you a good example of Toyota with the regional strategy, and how regions such as Europe and North America are sufficiently large but different markets. And so they decided that it was really worth customizing operations into different regions, all right? And so independent of, as we all know, it's a Japanese company, so independent of their headquarters there. And so they gave you an example of independent units based on regions, and it gave you an example of consider the price of gasoline insignificantly higher in Europe than in the United States. So when you go to Europe, you're not going to see all the SUVs, and I'm not saying you won't see any, but you will not see the influx of them like we see here. Big trucks, that's not near as common. When I go to Sweden, when we just went this summer, but when we go to Sweden, you might see one pickup truck the entire time you're there. So very, very different when it comes to that. And then it talks about here the local strategy. So this is when a company adapts its products to meet the needs of local markets. It gives you a great example in here that I use in my class a lot, and it talks about McDonald's. So McDonald's are known for what? Their hamburgers. And so, but in India, the cow is sacred. They don't eat beef. And so the McDonald's in India, they do not have the same burgers we have. They don't focus on burgers. They don't offer beef or pork. And it mentions here in your book that their burgers are made out of potatoes and peas, which sound really gross to me, actually. But, I will not knock it. I don't knock anything till I try it. So they focus more on chicken, and veggies and stuff like that. Another good example, like if you go to anywhere in Europe, like I'll give you an example in Sweden. We stopped in at a McDonald's one time a few years ago, and they sell beer in their McDonald's, and you won't see that here. And so they really just cater to that, using those strategies, really catering to the locals versus just using, because if you're McDonald's and you open in India and you're selling burgers and nobody eats beef, well, you're not going to sell anything. You're not going to make any money. You're just going to lose money. And so another example of that would also be Starbucks in China. So here in the United States, we have lots of coffee drinkers. In China, they have more tea drinkers. And so they have kind of catered their menus in China to offer more tea than coffee, if you will. And so just another example of how they can utilize those local strategies. Lastly, the necessity of global markets, all right? So, how can a company go international? There's several different ways here and that they talk about. I'm going to highlight a few. One of the ways is exporting. I'm sure you've heard exporting and importing. Exporting is when you are selling goods to a different country. Importing is when you're bringing in goods from a different country. But exporting is the cheapest way that a company can go international, but it offers the company the least amount of control. So it really depends on the company and what they're wanting to get out of it. Another way that companies can go international or global is licensing and franchising. and it goes a little bit more in depth here about licensing and franchising. So make sure that you read up on that. But licensing just being, it giving another company the right to use your products, if you will. And then same with franchising, charging a fee. They're able to use typically your name, trademarks, your products, stuff like that, and they gain royalty fees and whatnot. So examples of licensing would be if you go to a restaurant and they sell Coca-Cola products, right? They have a license to sell Coca-Cola products. There is a reason why most places you go don't have the mixed Coca-Cola and Pepsi. They either have one or the other. They either usually have a license. In fact, if you didn't know, we have had a Coca-Cola license here for a long time at Pulaski Tech, and we're switching to Pepsi. So, but you will, and that has ruffled some feathers. But you will, but that's the difference. That's what licensing is. Just giving somebody permission, charging them a fee, of course, of using your products. A franchise is a little bit more. Same thing, royalties. They pay royalties, fees, and whatnot. But they are typically opening another one, like a company. So think like McDonald's, right? If I go to open a McDonald's, I'm opening a franchise. And so it's a little bit different than just a license, all right? Because McDonald's might have a license agreement with Coca-Cola, right? But the franchising, so you can do international franchising, maybe open up a franchise in a different country. My husband forever, he grew up in Sweden, and he was disappointed after coming to college and realizing, discovering Taco Bell and realizing there was no Taco Bell in Sweden. And for the longest time, he wanted to do that. Now there is, I believe. So, but that's another way too. There's a lot of disadvantages. There's a lot of fees that are involved with licensing and franchising. You don't have a lot of free reign when it comes to licensing and franchising. You really have to follow the rules and regulations of the licensor or franchisor. And so there's not a lot of free reign with that. So there's pros and cons to both. Another way to go international is strategic alliances. So this is where just two or more companies from different countries enter into an agreement to conduct or joint business activities. All right. So there's lots of different examples here. They give you one in your book that Nissan had a strong presence in North America, providing a much needed boost of global ambition there. And so it's just really, there's a reason why we have a lot of foreign cars here in the United States. So a lot of strategic alliances going on there. Another way is FDI, so foreign direct investment. So once again, this just involves a company and investing in another country. Through different, it could be construction of facilities and buildings in another country. It could be different things, but that is what foreign direct investment is. There's some, disadvantages to this as well, and it lists some here in your book. It talks about political risk because, there's a lot of political risk when you go to other countries because they might not think or practice the same way we do here, which a lot of them don't. And so there's a lot of coordinating risks and stuff involved there. But go back up real quick. So it gives an example here, and it's asking, so it says many car companies such as Toyota, Honda, BMW, Nissan, etc. have fully operational plants in the United States, all right? So they're not based here, but they have a lot of plants here. And it just makes it, cheaper to be able to do business back and forth, and it's a great way just to, once again, expose themselves to the international business, global business. And it gives, once again, more competitive, cheaper cost, etc. there. It's kind of a wrap on Chapter 6. Once again, lots of good information. I tried to hit the highlights without making it too long, but I feel like it was longer than I anticipated. But read up. I hope you find it interesting. And I will be chatting with you soon.